Perhaps don't do it because you might compromise my one.
Bismillah, Idris Bhai, Maulana, you can begin.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the Lord of all the worlds, to whom we belong, to whom is our return, and may His choicest blessings go to the highest of Allah's creation, our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most generous in companionship, the most gentle in speech, indeed the most eloquent ambassador for humanity at large. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and of course, good afternoon, because alhamdulillah, we also get people of other faith that listen to the webinar. I want to just say a few things at the very beginning. Number one is that around about 45 minutes or so, when we have concluded this presentation, then you are free to raise your hands if you want to ask a question, right? And secondly, what is also important is this, that it's important, the purpose, and I want you to understand this, one second please, Mommy. Okay, the purpose of this webinars is to educate, inspire, and to teach. What we are hoping, we don't want to be philosophical and everything else. We want you to implement this in your life, because you would agree we are living at a time of a great deal of conflict of your mind, conflict in our societies, in our communities. And sometimes we do not realize the harm it does to us and people around us. How often conflicts are caused through misinformation, misunderstanding. So inshallah, I pray that today's webinar will give you some insight. So therefore, it is in this particular context, we are so happy to have someone that is very, very beloved of me, Maulana Ibrahim Bam, who is going to do the bulk of the presentation. Many of you know him, but as they always say, MC says, you know him, but they read out a long CV, but I'll read a very, very short bio data, and I'll make some personal comments. Maulana, alhamdulillah, studied in Karachi. He's been there for about 10 years. He's the Imam of the New Town Mosque for the last 35 years. He's the Amir of the Johannesburg Muslim School. He's the Secretary General of the Jamiat al-Ulama. So he's involved in many, many organizations. And Maulana has always been an activist. He gets involved in the community. And he wants to confront issues, but without being confrontational. So Maulana, just at the beginning, I would like you to open this whole discussion with some kind of preamble, Maulana. And I want to say Jazakumullah for responding to my kind invitation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all the esteemed listeners and those who are participating, the participants. Idris Bhai, Jazakallah for that introduction. It has been an honor to know you. We have traveled several places in the world together. And we hope, inshallah, after the lockdown, we will be able to travel even further, different places.
Maulana, I must tell you, at the moment, I'm eating humble pie at home.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I would just like to say, and is an introduction to the topic. There are many things that I would like to say, Idris Bhai, but we have 45 minutes to conclude our presentation, then opening it up for questions. So what I'm going to do is that just start off by a preamble, and that is Allah Ta'ala has created us human beings, especially the Ummah, as social beings. So Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانَ. I created human being and I've taught him means of communication. I taught him speech. Through the means of speech, he communicates with one another. And there are many other examples in the Quran which tells us about men and human beings being social beings. And we have to interact. One of the most beautiful aspects with regard to this interaction is the hadith in Sahih Muslim. المسلم الذي يخالط الناس ويصبر على أذاهم خير من المسلم الذي لا يخالط الناس ولا يصبر على آذاهم. A Muslim who interacts with people, and while in interaction, and this is very interesting because I will refer back to it, and in interaction, he bears their inconvenience, is better than that Muslim who does not interact with people and does not have to bear the inconvenience. And this answers a very, an important question and a thought pattern that many people have. I don't want to get involved in the matters of the Ummah. There's too much complication, too much politics, and I'm just going to get involved in unnecessary turmoil. So this hadith tells us a Muslim who interacts with people and he bears the inconvenience is better than a Muslim he doesn't interact with people. He doesn't have to bear the inconvenience. So easy to say, I don't want to get involved with people. I don't want to get involved with issues. It's just unnecessary, complication. So Allah Ta'ala wants us to interact. Now interaction, which is of course one of the great things that Islam wants us, and there are many, many benefits with regard to interaction. But in interaction, if there has to be one drawback, the drawback is there's always going to be a situation where if you are going to interact with people, then there's going to be a situation where there's going to be a vulnerability or possibility of, a situation of disputes and arguments. So just to give an example how Allah Ta'ala makes mention of it, فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجِّ فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. So Allah Ta'ala says that when Hajj becomes faraz, then there are three things that you have to be careful about. One of them is wala jidal. Don't dispute and argue. Now, the ulama say, why did Allah Ta'ala specifically mention don't dispute and argue in the context of Hajj? Well, where there is more interaction, there are more people, and there is greater interaction. Because there is greater interaction, there's always the possibility of greater type of arguments and disputes. So we are social beings. In social interaction, there's always a chance of disputes and arguments. Now, disputes and arguments are no ordinary matter. It has a tremendous repercussion both upon our worldly and our spiritual life. And that is how we will go on to discuss the harms of argumentation and disputes.
Maulana, we all agree that, we are social beings and that in our interaction, we often are going to have issues, right? And I think that's so important. And you also indicated that we as human beings have to interact with others. And that is fundamental to our peaceful coexistence. So my question to you is this, whilst this interaction is necessary, right? And you say that arguments and disputes would happen, right? But how do these disputes, how can they harm us both morally and materially?
Well, firstly, I think, by Allah Ta'ala in the Holy Quran has mentioned that human beings tend to be very argumentative and, and it is why, you and I will say in South Africa, it's more than other places in the world. So Allah Ta'ala has made وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. In Surah Kahf, human being is prone towards, human being is prone towards argumentativeness. Now, argumentation has tremendous repercussions. So Allah Ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ وَاصْبِرُوا. Do not dispute and argue with other people, especially disputes. Disputes have great harms. So one of it is it takes away barakah, it makes you weak, it takes away the blessedness of Almighty Allah. فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. It makes you weak, it takes away your strength. Another harm with regard to argumentation, it takes away the blessings of Almighty Allah. So you find this incident which Tafsir ibn Kathir has mentioned, that during the course of coming to tell the Sahaba about the precise night of Laylatul Qadr, two people were fighting. And because of that, Allah Ta'ala lifted that knowledge till the day of Qiyamah. Our ulama say there's other benefits and wisdom in it, But because of that fighting, Allah Ta'ala lifted that knowledge. Then there is a beautiful statement of Luqman, the wise, and whom Allah Ta'ala has attributed and named an entire surah under the name of Surah Luqman. So in that, one of his statements, amongst his many beautiful statements, he said, May yuksirul mirah yashtim, or it could also be read as yushtam. The one who fights and argue, either two things are going to happen. Either he is going to swear and abuse someone else, or someone else is going to abuse or swear him. And both of these things are not good. Why should you be swearing and abusing someone? And why should you be the butt of someone's abuse? So the bottom line is, stay away from arguments and disputes as far as possible. Many other examples, and this one quote is something that I will just conclude this aspect with. Abdullah ibn al-Hasan ibn al-Hussein was asked, what do you think of arguments and disputes and conflict? So he replies, what a beautiful reply. He said, it spoils old friendships. It severs firm relationship. It is at the very least a means of overpowering others in arguments, which is the strongest case for the severance of relationships. So yes, you sometimes can overpower someone in an argument, but during the course of that, you are going to break relationship. And I just recall a statement of one of our great elders in South Africa, by Padia Rahmatullah alayhi, who used to be the Amir of the Jamaat Tabligh in South Africa. He used to say many a times, we win the battle and we lose the war. He said, don't win the battle and lose the war. So I think this is another important point, that sometimes during the course of arguments, you might overpower someone in arguments, but what actually happens is you break relationship. And this is one of the many harms of arguments and disputes.
You know, Maulana, I mean, when you were speaking, I'm reminded of two things. I think it was Hazrat Ali who also reminded us, it's better to win the friend than the argument. You know, we get so caught up in argumentation that you want to score points at whatever expense. But the second point, I would like you to, I'm sure it will come in your presentation, but I don't want to preempt it, but I thought I'll ask this. I mean, is there harm when people just disagree? You know, for example, do all of us have to agree with everything someone else says? And should that disagreement lead to argumentation and conflict?
Well, this is one of the very great things that Islam has taught us. One, you see, while there is harms of arguments and disputes, there is an aspect of laudable argumentation. This is some people might say, where do you get it? Well, Allah Ta'ala in the Quran has made mention, وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Do not dispute and argue with the Ahl Kitab except in a way that is good. Now the ulama, when they translate and they give an interpretation of that verse, they say that if an argumentation is there to find out the truth, to come to the bottom of something, to find out when there is a discussion to find out the truth, to get to the bottom of things, it is a laudable argumentation. But the unfortunate part is we never ever keep to the lauded part of the argumentation. We always take it towards our argumentations tend to become destructive and harmful rather than constructive. You know, we hear that people had been discussing. I mean, it is said about Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, despite their wide divergence on a variety of issues, an onlooker said, I saw them in Masjid al-Nabawi sitting after Isha for almost the entire night, sitting and discussing issues. One of the greatest comment and opinion you can ever hear in this regard is the statement of Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, who said, whenever I discuss a matter with another person on discussion, and of course we have different views, I always make dua to Almighty Allah that Allah must put the truth on his tongue that I can submit towards it. Now that's a height of sincerity. That you argue with a person, or you dispute with a person, you discuss with someone, and you make dua that, oh Allah, my purpose is to find out the truth. And if the truth comes upon his tongue, I will readily submit. Now in today's time, we don't do those type of arguments. Our arguments has always been to see how we can overpower another, score points, and to degrade the person whom you have a difference of opinion. It has never been that way with our pious predecessors and our legacy. And just to give you one small example to highlight this point, otherwise it's something that is very dear to me and I speak a lot with regard to it, that even if there is a difference of opinion, a valid difference of opinion, there should be a great amount of respect. Someone asked Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi once, and he said, Imam, you believe that when a person bleeds, it breaks and it invalidates his wuzu, his ablution. So will you read namaz behind a person who holds a different view? And it could actually happen. You believe your bleeding breaks wuzu. Someone believes, and not only he believes, it might actually happen, he bled and he didn't make wuzu and he came and read salat. And he was the imam. Would you read namaz behind him? Would you read your salah behind him? So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi said, are you telling me that I should not read salah behind Imam Malik? Are you actually telling me I should not read salat behind Imam Malik and Imam Sayyid ibn Musayyib, who are great scholars who do not believe that bleeding, invalidates the wuzu? And there are other scholars like that. So, sometimes there are issues where we disagree, but it doesn't mean we have to have, hatred and we have to be disagreeable, as the saying goes.
Yeah, you see, the Maulana, there are several issues. One of the issues that we can also speak about, the moment I think when your ego comes into play, once it's about me, myself, I, and the idea of saying to someone else, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, whatever, people are not prepared to humble themselves to do that. And I think in the end, often arguments do take place, even though they do not concede that the other person perhaps may have a different view and maybe a better view. So I think what's important is this, I think the issue of ego, right? But Mona, I'm sure you'll discuss that a little later. And the question that I have here is how do we avoid and deal with disputes?
Well, a very interesting question, Idris, and I think something that we all need to look at. How do you, first of all, because of the harms which I have outlined, the first thing would be avoid an argument before it takes place. So the first thing is avoid an argument and dispute before it takes place. Now this is very interesting. It comes from a Quranic guidance. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When the ignorant engages you in argument, don't engage with him. Say salama, salaman to you. To you, your way. I don't want to get involved in an argument. And there are many similar references. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had said with regard to the fasting in Ramadan, that if anyone, إِذَا سَابَ أَحَدُكُمْ, if anyone abuses you, engages you in argument, and you are fasting, فَلْيَقُلْ, then tell unto him, Inimra'un sa'im, I am fasting, I don't want to fight with you. Go your way by you, I don't want to get involved in an argument with you. So the first point, stay away from arguments before it comes away. Stay away from a person whom you are afraid that you are going to get involved in an argument. I never ever believe that you should cut off ties with a person. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had said, La yahillu lirajul an yahjura akhahu fawqa thalath. It is not permissible for a person to remain aloof from a fellow believer, for more than 3 days out of enmity and hostility. Right? So I never ever advocate cutting off ties with someone. However, what is something is that if you feel that you are not going to get in, you don't get along with someone, and there's a propensity that you are most likely going to get into a big argument with someone, then have less to do with him. Maybe keep a respectful difference. So the first thing is stay away from people, stay away from places, stay away from an argument before it actually comes. And then of course we go to the second thing. And do you want me to go to the second? I got four ways of dealing with arguments.
I was going to ask you, do you have a kind of logical step, some steps people can take, Maulana?
Yes, as I said, how do we deal with arguments and disputes? The first thing I made mention, stay away from an argument, stay away from a place, stay away from people that you feel that you are most likely going to get involved in an argument and dispute with them. The second thing is which is also part of what our ulama have made mention is, now maybe if I can just bring in an aspect of humor here, Idris, but I think we can't just have our discussions only very, very. Stay away from statements that leads to arguments. There's this one thing that goes away, how the fight started. I don't know if you notice this. They say how the fight started is how the fight started between two spouses. Now I have to be very gender neutral. I'm not going to say which one said what.
You must. I will get me to trouble also. Eh?
So they said one of the spouses told another spouse that don't you see that I'm becoming old. Look at my wrinkles coming upon my underneath my eyes. My hair is becoming gray. This and that. Tell me something complimentary. So the other spouse said that your eyesight is very good, and the fight started. So yes, we stay away from places, stay away from people, stay away from statements that could lead to argument. The second point, which is very interesting, consider unilateral withdrawal. Now, some people don't see the benefit of that. You get involved in an argument with someone, we always feel I have to make my point, whether it be by force of my argument, by force of my discussion. And sometimes people say, don't raise your voice, raise the quality of your argument rather than raising your voice. But people feel I raise my voice, I won the argument. But sometimes consider unilateral withdrawal. You get involved in an argument with someone, you said, is it worthwhile for me to continue this argument? Is it worthwhile for me to continue this discussion? Is it worthwhile for me to continue this dispute? Walk away. Walk away. And walking away, is amazing, has tremendous benefits. Look at this hadith in Abu Dawood. أنا زعيم ببيت في وسط الجنة لمن ترك المراء وهو محق. I guarantee a house in the middle of Jannah, said our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, for a person who walks away from an argument while he is correct. I mean, I'm just amazed by this beauty of this hadith. I guarantee a house in the middle of Jannah for a person who walks away from an argument while he is correct. And the hadith goes on to say, I guarantee a house on the periphery of Jannah for a person who walks away from an argument while he is wrong. Now just look at this. While he is wrong is not a virtue, but the fact he walked away from an argument makes him worthy of being in the periphery of Jannah. While walking away from an argument while you know you're right, just say it's not worthy of me fighting over this matter. So you've got to choose your battles and sometimes walk away. And also part of walking away is the aspect of forgiveness. Now, it just so happened that this morning I tweeted something. And I tweeted something which was in line of this. Now, what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is a right to which you are entitled to. You are entitled to that right, but you forego it for a greater good. Now, that is forgiveness. So where do we get this definition? So Allah Ta'ala says in the 25th juz of the Holy Quran, وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا. The legal recompense of a wrong done to you is to do likewise wrong to that person who has done you wrong. He has taken your 100 rand, you're going to take that 100 rand away from him by force. That's your legal right. You are entitled. He took your money, you go and see to it, your legal right to go and get back that money that he has taken from you. He has done you certain harm, you got the right to go and deal with that. That's your legal right. But look at how Allah says in the next portion of the verse, فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. But if you forgive and reconcile, your reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So forgiveness is a right which you are entitled to. I am entitled to go and do someone that amount of harm that he has done to me. But I forego it for the sake of a greater good. وَأَنْ تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Says Allah in another place in the Quran, if you forgive, it's closer towards Almighty Allah. If you forgive, it is closer towards Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are many examples like that in the Holy Quran. And then one of the greatest thing, when we consider forgiveness, we look at it as an act of weakness. We say, no, that person did me wrong, I'll teach him a lesson. That's a general human instinctive nature, right? And we feel that that is actually courage. I'll teach that person a lesson. But Allah Ta'ala in the Quran says, وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. The person who forgives and the person who makes sabr, this is an act of courageous will. Subhanallah. And I think that is something that is the reality with regard to it, that when we do, the second aspect with regard to disputes is to walk away from an argument.
Yeah. Maulana, this issue of forgiveness is something so important. I've seen this happen, that after a person, let us say two individuals, and one of them was not prepared to forgive the other person and went on that way. And every time he stretched out his hand to him, he was rebuffed. And then the person who was seeking his forgiveness dies. And the other man now, it was such a defining moment, he regrets not forgiving him. One of the ironies I tell people is this, like, when we are searching for the Laylatul Qadr evening, night, whatever, we cry to Allah, we want Allah to forgive us. Yet, the reality is there's so many people around us, we rebuff them. So the theme of forgiveness cannot be overemphasized. And my suggestion to the viewers, alhamdulillah, is, we wanted to implement this lesson. In the end, sometimes we are so preoccupied of how they're going to respond. You do your duty. You reach out to the person. If that person does not respond, then it is out of your control, right? Okay. Maulana, the next point I want to discuss, can you share with us some pointers in resolving conflicts? There are many people who try to reconcile, want to resolve conflicts. Other things that they need to bear in mind, how should they resolve conflicts? Or how should people involved in a conflict try to resolve it, Maulana?
Well, I think, as I said, there was a 4-step thing. So the first step is walk away from an argument, stay away from places or people that you can reach into an argument or dispute. The second thing is consider unilateral withdrawal, forgive the person. Sometimes you forgive not only because of whether you are right or wrong, but just for the sake of, see, someone said sometimes you forgive to forget the past and move away, to move to the future. You don't want to carry the burden. It's not a matter of whether the person is right or wrong. You don't only forgive for that person's sake, you forgive for your own sake, so that you can move away from the situation and go ahead. Otherwise, you are constantly drawn back to the incident, the person, the place, and you can't move ahead. And the third thing with regard to resolving an argument is to consider what the Quran says, compromise. وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. Subhanallah. Allah says compromise is good. And I just read a statement just, while I was reading on this particular topic. And Idris, I'm sure you must have come across this. What a beautiful statement. He said the best journey you will ever make, the best journey you will ever make is to walk to meet a person halfway. It's amazing. The best journey you will ever make is to walk to meet a person halfway. And here Allah Ta'ala says, وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. What does sulh means? Sulh means you understand something, you do understand I need to have my full rights, right? But in getting your full rights, it's becoming a challenge. So he said, okay, let me give and take. Let me give something, let me take something. Let me come to a situation where I can come to a compromise by meeting the person halfway. I'll give something and I will expect the other person to give me something, and we will come middle way to resolve the issue. So Allah refers to that as saying, وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. Now, Mufti Taqi Usmani in his tafsir very beautifully mentioned, he said, although the context of the verse is with regard to a dispute between husband and wife, he says this verse and this portion of the verse is much more wider. And that is, sometimes compromise is better for you than, insisting upon your full rights. And I'm sure, Idris Bhai, you must also have heard, something that our elderly people used to say. And there were a lot of wisdom in what our elderly people used to say. And one of the things that our elderly people used to say was that sometimes, a less than satisfactory resolution and compromise is better than winning the matter in court.
Correct.
And better than a win in a winning judgment. They say when you sort of compromise, the matter is in your hand. The matter is in your hand, and you can choose what to give and what to take. So the third thing with regard to a dispute is, I think, so important is to consider meeting the person halfway. And I think it's just such an important point that many times people don't look into it. And the fourth thing is to go for mediation and arbitration, which Allah Ta'ala in the Holy Quran has also referred to. وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَبَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. If ever you have a situation where there is a dispute between husband and wife, then let the husband appoint one person as a mediator, or or an arbitrator, whatever it is. They can get two people, and they can get together. So mediation and arbitration is also an option with regard to resolving your disputes. Mediation and arbitration, the difference is, and I'm sure you know the technical details more. Mediation, the mediator does not give a judgment. Now, many people don't understand this. A person is mediating and they said, you didn't say the truth. You didn't give a judgment. Well, a mediator is not supposed to give a judgment. A mediator facilitates an agreement between people. So he sometimes see, all right, where can I facilitate an agreement between people? He does not give a judgment on right and wrong. He just said, all right, you got this, you want this. Why don't you consider taking this, taking less, little less, so that you can come to an overall settlement. So he does what brings about a compromise and a mediated settlement. An arbitrator, on the other hand, he listens to arguments. He doesn't go and try and bring people together on the basis of a compromise. He can do it, but he listens to the arguments. He counter questions. He allows the people to do, evidence, counter evidence, cross examination, and then after everything is, clarified, he knows what is actually happening. He arbitrates and he gives a decision. So the fourth thing is consider giving it over to mediation, which I prefer, or to arbitration. So when you have a dispute, these are four steps which one can consider, and there might be more steps also, but I'm just giving you. Firstly, stay away from a place where you are going to get involved in an argument. Stay away from places, people where you can get involved in an argument. Comes from a Quranic verse. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. Second thing, consider unilateral withdrawal. Learn to forgive the person and move on. Right, so the dispute dies. The third thing is consider a compromise. Consider something halfway. You meet the person halfway. So, you compromise some of your rights and you take some of your rights because you don't want to take the matter further. And I think the last thing is that you consider going to competent people, people whom you trust, and both the people trust, and they can go in for mediation and arbitration.
Yeah, Maulana, there are just two things. The one is that I found when people are secure individuals, they've got a healthy self-esteem and they're secure, they're able to deal with differences. Alhamdulillah, they do not regard any person who disagrees. It does not erode their self-esteem. There's also the issue that a person feels secure and his real concern is relationship with Allah and of course people around him, and he does not allow that to affect his ego. That's one. The second thing is this. I know that many people that are participating perhaps might be going through some kind of conflict in the marital home. And one of the things that I recommend strongly, and I'm sure this is something that you would also reinforce, is the idea that each one of us has a different way of dealing with the situation of conflict or disagreement. And the couples need to understand that. Some of them might find a person walking away as an affront. Why is he walking away? Why don't you talk about it, right? Often the wisdom behind walking away is not to exacerbate the situation. Because what we don't want people to do is when there's a situation, there's an elephant in the room, as it were, that you ignore it, you sweep it under the carpet. So do you recommend, no matter what the issue needs to be discussed and resolved? You might walk away now from it it does not mean you're walking away permanently.
I think there's two things that I would just like to bring in. One, I definitely agree with you that many a times disputes are caused by people who are lacking in confidence. I firmly believe in that. I believe many a times people resort to disputes and arguments to give themselves relevance. And one of the most beautiful things that I have learned is that, throughout history, when Muslims were strong, they were tolerant. So when you see Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu refusing to read Salat in a church because he was strong, right? And whenever Muslims were strong, they gave non-Muslims the right to fulfill their religious obligation. They were strong, they were powerful, they had the confidence. And now when we are weak, we are intolerant. I personally feel much of our fightings and disputes today is a sign and a manifestation of our weakness. That is a reality. Now, the other point is with regard to, so when you said that, many a times a person who is confident will stay away from an argument more than someone who is less lacking in confidence, I firmly believe in that. And of course, there are many reasons with regard to conflict and dispute. Sometimes might be personality clashes, sometimes could be jealousy. Now, that is another discussion. But on the second point that you made mention, that when a person leaves an argument because he feels that it is not something that he wants to discuss, I think is a very important point. I always tell people never discuss something when both of you are angry. Because you will make, they say the worst talk you will give is when you are angry. The worst talk you will ever give is when you are angry. And I think this is very, very important. Now, we also get this from Islamic jurisprudence. In Islamic jurisprudence, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi has made mention with regard to it when he said that the Qazi must never give a judgment when he's angry. Right? The father or the ustad must never ever discipline people when they are angry. And we know a lot of students who have borne the brunt of the discipline and punishment of the ustads when they were angry. When we were small, we used to say that Appa must have trouble, Maulana, therefore he's giving it to us today. Yeah. So anyway, whatever it is, so don't ever discuss a matter when you are angry, especially when both parties are angry. You need to discuss the matter, and you correctly said, Idris Bhai, that sometimes a matter needs to be discussed. But, if you are angry, you're not going to do justice in resolving the issue. And I think many a times, I've seen this happening in marriages, and you have also seen it. The wife will say, why are you not discussing the matter? Why are you not discussing the matter? Discuss it. You are a coward. Give me a talaq if you feel that you got the manhood, or you got the courage to do so. And then the husband also then caves into it when he's not supposed to do that. And, blurts out the divorce, and then, of course, there's regret all around. So don't discuss anything when both parties are angry. And if one party is angry, at least the sensible thing would be that the other party say that you are angry at the moment. Let's discuss it after a while. Let's discuss it when we are both in a sober, in a better state of mind.
Yeah. In fact, Maulana, I think, if one can have a simple rule of thumb, is knowing when to speak and when to be quiet. That's it. Knowing, you see, the whole thing is this, people that have a self-esteem, have emotional intelligence, they are aware of Allah, they are aware, whenever they speak, they are aware of each word they are saying, they are aware of the environment, and they know, this environment here is getting a bit hostile, so I'd rather be quiet. But it's when they allow the mouths to go free rein that they say things they would regret for the rest of their life. And I think it's something that we need to understand. Maulana, now if you look at it, generally speaking, what are some of the contemporary issues that are creating conflicts? What are some of the core contemporary issues?
Well, are you looking at issues, or are you looking at the reasons why contemporary reasons why people get involved in arguments?
Yeah. So what I'm saying,
I would say perhaps one of the reasons would be, there is no doubt whatsoever, there is an over-exaggerated or opinion of the self in today's time more than any time before in the history of humankind. Previously there was a certain degree of, a set rule within structures. So the elders used to do something in the family or in the community, etc. Now things have become such, and there is some benefit in this also, where people have now got a voice. But what has actually happened is that, and I put it this way, that there's a new trinity of the age that you and I are living in. And the trinity is me, myself, and I. So everyone just feels I'm also someone. I'm also someone. I need to say something. And of course, we see this in social media. Everyone is an expert. In today's time with regard to COVID, I've always found that everyone is a medical practitioner and everyone is a mufti. So everyone has got an opinion with regard to things. So I think one of the aspects, and Maulana Thanveer Rahmatullah Alayhi, one of our great scholars, has very beautifully put it in this way. He said many times people talk of unity, but he says the basis and the essence of unity, is humility, right? And sincerity. He said, no matter how much you talk about unity and reconciliation and harmony, if you don't have these two qualities, you'll never be able to achieve it. So today we are lacking in these qualities. So therefore we find more arguments and disputes, because arguments and disputes many a times are manifestations of things that are building within us. And sometimes it's a lack of humility, it's pride and arrogance. People who are, who have humility and who are humble, they will walk away very easily from a situation of a dispute and argument compared to a person who is proud and arrogant. So I think that is one of the reasons. Then of course, you have jealousy. Jealousy has also been one of the greatest reason with regard to, Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has made mention with regard to it, that dabba ilaykum da'ul umami qablakum, the diseases of the previous ummats have come upon you, and one of the diseases is the hasadu wal baghdad, and one of them is jealousy and hatred. And then he said, hiya al-haliqa, it shaves off. It shaves off. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, I don't say it shaves off your hair, because we normally, when we say shave, we say it shaves off the hair. He said, no, I don't say it shaves off your hair. It shaves off your deen. It shaves off your religion. So I think if you say two things, I would say one is the over-exaggeration of one's ego, and the other aspect would be jealousy. And in of course, ego, I would also include pride and arrogance. And one of the reasons why there is such a great amount of, disputes and arguments in families and communities, etc.
Yeah. Maulana, I think, like you and I, we have traveled many parts of the world, and I think there are many great things happening in our country, but we are really a fragmented ummah. We have become divided, and every other day there is a new organization and so on and so forth. And I got no issue, when people want to form organizations, but what my concern is that when people at the top, at the helm of leadership, are divided and they show acrimony, people who follow them also have a kind of hostility that is very, very unhealthy. I just find, I think I once told you this, I'm like you, I'm in so many WhatsApp groups, and each group you find people are speaking with authority, and whether it's a weakness, I don't know, but I do not give my opinion on anything, because people are so volatile. We are not prepared to have robust debates, we're not prepared to be receptive to other ideas. And the moment you say something, people come down you as a ton of bricks. And I don't want to allow that toxicity rather to impact on my life. And what are your general recommendations for a community like a minority in South Africa, in UK, other parts of the world, when they are a minority? How do you think we can become far more cohesive, that we are able to have healthy differences without it impacting negatively?
Well, you brought up a very important point. I think one of the, one of the things that we talk about is, of course, religious disputes and arguments, right? And this is very, very sad that it actually comes down to a situation. I think that one of the things that general recommendation with regard to people who have different organizations, different type of leanings, inclination, is always never lose sight of the bigger picture. Never lose sight of the bigger picture. And what is the bigger picture? Two people who believe in Allah, who believe in the same Quran, who believe in the same Allah, believe in the same Nabi, who have the same value systems by and large, who believe in 95% or 99.9% of things together, they are more closer to one another than those people who do not believe. We have to look at the bigger picture. We have to say, okay, you have a difference of opinion on one matter, be it so. If I, for example, following the Hanafi school of thought and I walk into a masjid and the Shafi Imam reads Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim loud, am I going to walk out of the masjid because he reads Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim loud where I don't read it loud? I mean, those are acceptable differences of opinion. We can't go and, make that into a point of contention. So all I'm saying is that we have to understand, look at the broader picture, and we have to be getting together on at least things that we agree upon. Those that we don't agree upon, leave it for one side. Maybe we will deal with it one day. Maybe we can come to an agreement, or sometimes there is no need to come to an agreement. There is no need for us to come to an agreement whether a person must make Rafa Yadain or not. Whoever is doing it, let them do it. So I think that is one important thing. And I think one most important thing with regard to religious disputes and arguments is that it is difficult for us to see the light of truth in the heat of argumentation. Therefore, Imam Malik Rahmatullah alayhi had said, argumentation, religious argumentation, extinguishes the light of knowledge in the heart. And religious argumentation is, for those who have the capacity to form their opinions. For the lay people, I just give one small method with regard to, stopping this unnecessary type of war or words that we have. By you follow the Imam or the Maulana whom you have confidence in. And don't speak bad about the Imam and the Alim that who is opposed to the view of your Alim or your Maulana or your Imam. Follow the one and just leave it. You don't have to get involved in the argumentation. You don't understand many a times the finer point and finer details with regard to the argumentation or the evidence. Leave that. All you have to do is just follow the one whom you have got trust in and leave it at that. And don't comment on other issues. You're just sort of exacerbating the situation.
Okay, I'm reminded of what you said, Maulana Yunus Patel, may Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus. You said the same thing. If you have confidence in your particular alim, then you follow him. Alhamdulillah. And inshallah, my prayer is that we are able to show more compassion, sensitivity, and so that we are able to contribute to a more cohesive community. Anyway, we would now, Maulana, with your permission, we would now allow our viewers to ask questions. There's a question which I'll read, and you and I could respond to it. In the meanwhile, those of you who want to ask a question, please raise your hand. Maulana, I must tell you this, I'm really enjoying this interaction, and I think there's a lot of pearls of wisdom. It's all there in Islam, and I really pray that we are able to apply it in our lives. I have a question.
Before you ask the questions, can I just, there's one very interesting incident that I made mention of, during the course of when we are talking about the 4 steps of how to resolve your differences. Stay away from an argument, consider unilateral withdrawal or forgiveness, compromise, or sometimes call a mediator. But this is very interesting. What is amazing is this, that, the Sahaba Ikram and the wives of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that was a Mubarak and blessed era. But there were also arguments and disputes in this, So once there was a difference of opinion between Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha and Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this was very interesting. So they said, okay, we have this difference of opinion. Who do we call as our mediator? Let him come and listen to us. So they agreed upon Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu came in to listen to the arguments and mediate on the matter. Now, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha started off, her complaints, Now bear in mind that this is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Aisha radiallahu anha was a wife, and she's addressing and speaking about her husband. She had every right to speak about it. Abu Bakr was a devoted, loyal follower, right? So when she started speaking about Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he couldn't take it. I mean, you dare speak about my Nabi, even if you're my daughter. So he got up to scold, rebuke, and even maybe do more than that. And Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came in between and said, Abu Bakr, I didn't call you for this. I called you to mediate. And you getting angry with your daughter, at least listen to her. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is steady between Aisha and Abu Bakr. And,
Yes.
you stop it, don't do this. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told Abu Bakr, you go away from here, you're not the right mediator. Because you are a loyal follower. And that has come into, for example, we hear in today's time, when there is a person who's a mediator, they say we got an issue because he can be prejudiced in this matter. So he must excuse and recuse himself because he's got a vested interest in the matter. So Abu Bakr was just too much involved in the love of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So anyway, they went away. And then of course, Hazrat Aisha and Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came together, and Abu Bakr came past and saw them. They were eating together and they were laughing. And Abu Bakr came in and said, can I join your laughter the way I joined your argument?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Right. Someone asked a question. If you were to raise your hands, you can look at the reaction button at the bottom, and you could please put your hand up. Anyway, let's go to this question here, right? We want to accommodate as many people as possible. I have been in situations which I cannot avoid to meet someone who hates me. For example, because we go to the same university lectures, and this person is expecting our meeting, and he uses it, to constantly annoy me. What advice would you give in such a situation? So you got the question, Maulana.
Yes, let me give an example of the life of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. One day a person came to Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he was known for being what we will call a fitna maker, a stirrer, who creates a lot of fitna. And Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told Aisha, this man, he creates a lot of difficulties, and he takes one story from another, and he creates this type of fitna. He's perhaps one of the person who is known for that. And when he came, Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam treated him exceptionally well, listened to him. And then when he went away, Aisha radiallahu anha was amazing. She was so perceptive. We learn, when people say we learn a substantial amount of our deen from Aisha, one of them was because of her perceptive questionings. So many different questions. I did a program once and I counted almost 10 different questions that open up vistas and oceans of knowledge for the ummah. So she said, Ya Rasulullah, but you just told me that this man has got these type of things, and yet you dealt with him so, socially, so great amount of civility. What is the reason with regard to this? So Nabi Karim Sallallahu said, Aisha, the worst of people are those that people stay away from them because of their vulgarity. So in response to that question, I would say is, always maintain the moral high ground. Don't ever react in a way that is not civil. That's one. Doesn't mean that you must not make mention of your points. Secondly, make mention of your points. Do it in a dignified manner. And thirdly, just keep a respectful distance by just dealing with the issues that needed to be dealt. Alhamdulillah, when you think about this, then one incident come to another incident. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is sitting with Aisha radiallahu ta'ala. Zainab radiallahu ta'ala comes in, and of course we must remember that the wives of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam were very great people, but they were human beings who had great amount of emotions because they loved Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And whenever you hear these incidents, it is out of the love of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that there was certain degree of words sometimes spoken because they were competing for the love of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Zainab radiallahu ta'ala started saying certain things that were unsavory. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala kept quiet. And then she looked at Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as if to say that, should I respond? Should I respond? And then Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, gave her the go ahead and said, protect yourself. And then she went to protect herself. Now, Aisha radiallahu anha was extremely eloquent. And when she responded, Zainab kept quiet. So Nabi Karim Sallallahu said, you are the true daughter of Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is also so eloquent. You are also so eloquent. So what we learn from here, three things which I just, in response to that question. Firstly, maintain civility. Don't go down to the lowest common denominator. If he is the one who is, saying things that are annoying, just bear with it. Deal with what needs to be dealt. Unnecessary, the sort of comments that are made that are not pertaining to the issue, let it go. Secondly, make mention of your points. But when you make mention of your points, do it with civility. Don't get angry. Put it down on the table. Where we learn from this, how Aisha radiallahu ta'ala responded to Zainab radiallahu ta'ala and Nabi Karim sallallahu approved of it. And I think the third thing is that, just keep the interaction to the point of necessity.
Okay, I just want to add to that point. What I want to tell her is that you should not allow someone else to impact on your behavior. You have nothing to hide. The fact that it's consuming you is really affecting you. It should not affect you. You should maintain, as Maulana said, your dignity, go up there and you maintain that distance, because in the end, you allow the person to control you. No one can make you feel small without your permission, right? Are there any people who want to ask a question directly, please? How can someone deal with an elder that causes emotional harm without wanting it to result to conflict argument? Right? Okay, I'll read the other question also, Maulana. Right? You got that question? Second one. Okay. Right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Yes, sister.
My question was, how do you correct someone who is clearly in the wrong, whether it's a spouse, for example, with their ego getting in the way? For example, they're clearly wronging you or saying something that's incorrect, and you want to correct them, but they're getting upset.
Okay, Maulana, you want to respond?
Yes, Jazakallah so much. I think there is a statement, I can't recall, one of our saintly people have made mention with regard to a statement of that nature, where they said that correcting a person in public is disgracing him. If you need to correct someone, firstly, never ever do it in public. He most likely would as a natural human instinctive thing, he would protect himself, and he will never acknowledge. So if you have to, bring about someone who is wrong in something, I think what is important is that what you need to do is go and speak to him in private, and always never ever adopt a situation of finger pointing. You are like this, you are like that, you are like this. If you are going to do something, at the end of the day, when we go and correct someone, we don't go and correct someone with the intention of scoring points. We want to do it for the betterment of the person. So I think what is important, firstly, is do it in private. Don't do it in public, and always find the best possible manner in doing it. And I'll just give you a small anecdote. I'll try and keep it very brief. Hazrat Hassan and Hussein radiallahu ta'ala were young when they saw an elderly person who was making wudu in a wrong way. Right? Now they said, how are we going to approach a person that he's making wudu incorrectly? So they went to him and said, we look upon you as someone who is elderly. You must be knowing much more than us. Myself and my brother, we are arguing whose wudu is better. So in that particular way, they both made wuzu in front of the elderly and said, now, and both of them were the grandsons of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They made wuzu in the perfect way. So they asked him, he said, tell us whose wuzu is better. What could he say? He just said, both of your wuzu is correct, mine is incorrect. So find ways of correcting the person in the best possible manner.
Yes, you see, Maulana, what you're saying is so true. I think the critical thing is this. When we look at, I think Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has reminded us that believers are like mirrors unto each other. Now, a mirror will not come to you, go to the mirror. And when you are wearing, for example, a white thobe, the mirror will recognize the purity of it. It will say it's looking so beautiful in the white thobe. And it will tell you, you might not have noticed that there's a little speck here, which you might, Now, it's also about you got to make sure in any healthy relationship, whilst we are there to help each other and pinpoint some areas of concern, you must also be complimentary. You also got to say good things. You cannot come there and tell the wife, you know what, let me tell you what I think about you, you know, that kind of thing, you know. So I think it's many people sadly lack wisdom. Are there any other questions here?
Well, just on that one, you know, they normally say you must use the sandwich method. Put the criticism between complementary things. So Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha once, your brother Abdullah ibn Umar is such a great human being with such great attributes. If only he can add tahajjud salat on a daily basis in his daily routine. When Abdullah ibn Umar came to know about it, he was such a good person. If only you added tahajjud prayers. Abdullah ibn Umar said, I never ever missed tahajjud prayers after that. Subhanallah.
Look at that. Look at that. Alhamdulillah. Right. Now, there is another question here. Let me see. Okay. Whilst the issues and conflicts of Muslim South Africa are such drastic, unrealistic, and possibly unconstitutional summonses and court verdicts, we as a minority need to look at our long-term existence and cohesive interaction with the others. We must form a representative Muslim organization like the MCB, Muslim Council of Britain, right? Okay, Muslim Council of Britain, who now formally represent Muslim rights in the UK. It has 25% ulama and the balance are leaders of distinction in economy, medicine, business, etc. In their fields, making policy differences and represent the government. This is urgent. Maulana, you know, this question, I think it's a fair question, right? That do you think if we had to form another, I don't want to do this, another umbrella body, but in this body it is made up with ulama and also professional people, you know, doctors, lawyers, whatever, so that they become that one voice that is like a lobby group and interacts with the government of the day. You think that's possible, Maulana?
I think it's very important that we need to do it, but I will just tell you one thing. I must have, during the course of my last decade in my interaction in community affairs, must have attended at least half a dozen, if not more, meetings to form an umbrella organization. So it never, you know, somehow or the other, it always never comes out to materialization. We have one situation of the Nad Ulama Council getting 9 ulama bodies together in an umbrella body. And I think maybe what needs to be done is they need to expand their horizons to get other people also as part of, I don't even know, call another umbrella body. People will become confused because there are so many umbrella bodies. I don't know if we got a big enough umbrella to cover all the umbrellas. Anyway, whatever it is, what I think what is also important, and that first portion of that, you know, which is so important is this portion about the aspect. Just wait, I just seem to have, yeah, the one where the brother asked the question with regard to you are part of a majority, you are part of a country. I think this is so important. Muslims don't seem to get this message that when you are part of a majority, you are 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever you are, it would be naive for us to think that the government is going to make a regulation only for you 3%, 4%. I mean, people took that particular view. We took a view that, listen, if you are going to go and ask for the opening of religious places and religious worship, then it's not going to be a situation where you are going to go alone and say, we want our masajid to be open. And the government is going to enact a law or give you accommodation that the mosques are going to be open, the churches won't be open. If you are going to have a situation, you're going to have to be together. It has to be one particular type of voice to say that we as a religious community want our religious places of worship to be open. So I think that's one. To give an example, one of our great scholars, Maulana Hussain Ahmad Madni Rahmatullahi Alayhi, had a great amount, he should emphasize this aspect with regard to peaceful coexistence and harmony between different religious groups. To such an extent that when he used to tell people after the partition, he used to tell Muslims, learn Hindi so you can better communicate with your Hindu neighbors. He used to tell Hindus, learn Urdu that you can have a better communication with your Muslim neighbors. And he emphasized this. If you read his works, you are absolutely amazed. And it's not something that is something new, that some new formation or a group of neoliberalist type of ulama are talking about. It is something that our scholars have spoken about. That when you are in a country, then what you need to do is great amount of emphasis upon peaceful harmony and coexistence. That's what Nabi Karim Sallallahu did when he came to Medina, and he set up the Mithaq Medina, which has 47 clauses with regard to peaceful coexistence between people of different backgrounds and religious affiliations.
In fact, Maulana, the reality is when people are away from the public light, everything else, when the lights are off, when you go to bed, I think we are able to confront our true self in terms of our conscience. To what extent what we say and do, is it about our ego? Is it for fame? Are you really concerned about healing? Because what the Ummah requires healing. We have become a bleeding Ummah. It requires healing. It requires, nurturing and so on and so forth. And you begin to wonder sometimes. And, and I don't judge anyone here. I think people are often well-intended. Is about, what can they do, right, to really make a change? So one of these, a question here. I just want to share something that my daughter said to me the other day. If it's not going to matter in 5 years' time, it's not worth spending more than 5 minutes having an argument about it,
Definitely. What a beautiful way. I think one of the beautiful points in this particular point, in that is choose your battles. Ask yourself, is it worth it to fight over this matter? And I think it has been put very beautifully. If it's not going to matter in 5 years' time, I will take it a step further. Ask yourself the question, will Allah Ta'ala ask you about that on the day of judgment? Imam Hanifa Rahmatullahi was asked many things, So many of the things that he said, he was told, he said, I'm not going to be questioned about this on the day of judgment. I'm not going to be questioned about it on the day of judgment. Are you going to make something a point of argument, break relationship over something that, won't matter in five years' time, the way sister has made mention, her daughter told us, and I will just add to it by saying, does it make really does it matter that you're going to argue over something that it won't matter at the time of your death? Death is a great leveler. Fir'aun, when he was dying, that Fir'aun who said, Ana Rabbukumul Ala, I'm your Lord. When he was dying, he said, Amantu annahu la ilaha illalladhi amanat bihi Banu Israel. I bring iman on the Lord of Banu Israel. So you must ask yourself a question, on my deathbed, or in my qabr, or in the akhirat, what I'm arguing about, will it really matter? So Jazakallah for that point, sister. It really is something that has brought about and brought to the fore certain very important things.
We have a question from Fatima Latif. Fatima, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum to the panel. Shukran to each one of you guys for adding your bits to it. With regards to dealing with conflict, I found that conflict comes in very different forms. It comes from marriages, it comes from family, it comes from best friends, it comes from social media influences that causes each one of us to have different opinions to each one situation. It all lies down to how the person that is being engaged in this conflict to address it to themselves. What have I done to cause this in my space? It also comes to the point where how do you deal with each one individually? When it comes to marriages, yes, the husband can be, you can be heated up in situations where one will be, both of you will be heated up in a situation, and when it calms down, like you want to address it, then you can't address it because the situation has already passed. But it's like, oh God, here we go again. Okay, so that's a marriage conflict. Then you have friends, where you have conflict with friends with regards to personality clash, where you confide in your best friend and they can turn against you and judge you for the information that you've previously shared. How do you react to that? What's your lesson in that? It also has family dispute where where siblings lose their parents and inheritance comes in. And how do you sort out inheritance with the siblings? Because, you know, we don't really step back from situations and say, how do I solve it? We already look for the problems in it and yes, be the better of each one. I think at the end of the day, it comes with maturity. And I'm speaking from experience of each sector of what I've mentioned, where it's, you know, depending on your circle of friends, depending on your spouse, depending on who comes in your space. It all depends on how you're going to really take control of each situation and step back from that. And it comes from maturity. That's it. Do you want to be in that space of conflict? I would say no. And at the same time, just question, what did I do to entertain it? What did I not do to entertain it? Which at the end of the day will give you more peace of mind. And you know, each conflict is very, very different. But at the same time, the only conflict that you can actually deal with, my personal opinion, is the conflict within yourself on how to address it within you. Like that, the message that came in here, would it matter to you in 5 years' time? Would it? No, if not. You know, we're always worried about the situation now, but conflict comes in so many different ways, and it depends on the individual itself, on do you let go and see, you know, the alternative to each one.
No, Fatima, you know what, I'm sure Molna can add to it. And what you're saying is so true. I mean, I found gently, I understand there are different contexts, different situations, different scenarios, but a lot depends on yourself, you know. It's about your own self, as you said, your maturity, your emotional development. Are you a person that is God conscious? Are you, for example, self-assured individual? You know, one of the ironies, I just refer to one aspect, is that when it comes to filial love and gratitude, lots of sons and daughters may not have been the most beloved children of the parents, but when they die, suddenly they all are fighting. They say, no, it is my share, I must have it, right? But you did not say when your dad, mom were alive, that's my father, my mother, I must be with them. Anyway, Jazakumullah for your comment, right? Maulana, anything you would add?
Jazakallah so much. Just 2 points on what Sister had said, Sister Fatima. Jazakallah for your contribution to this program. Obviously, we have been almost 1 hour 15 minutes, so maybe we might have to. I haven't been able to see the questions, and I'm sure the admin has been doing it. And I did see one post that came across the screen that if there is any other questions, then please send the email. You can send it to Idris Bhai, and maybe he can share it with me, and if I can be of any assistance, I'll try and be of assistance. But what is important is, Sister made mention of different types of disputes. So the family dispute, now one, and the financial dispute, I'm just going to very briefly make mention of it. The family dispute, what I find sometimes very, you know, disturbing is that we have more tolerance with our friends than what we have with our own family members. So many times a friend will tell you something and you will bear it. But your wife or your mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, brother, sister, siblings, tell you something, you just sort of react, you know, and I feel that we have to have greater tolerance within our own homes than even more so outside the home. Now, some of the other, when we're dealing with our friends, we have to protect our respect, our honor, our name, our fame. So we are more careful the way we speak in the community. But we don't do so in our homes. And that is the reason why Nabi Karim Sallallahu said, the best amongst you are those who are best to your spouses. Why did he say that? He said it because it's easy for you to cover and mask you know, your uncouth behavior at home than to do it outside. So the test of a person's character is not how he deals with his friends, is how he deals with his family members, who are many times frightened for him, or they are influenced by him, or they have a certain fear with regard to him. And I think it's so important that we have greater tolerance, and all those aspects of the ahadith with regard to good conduct Why do we feel it's only outside the house? I say we should start off with it within the house. So within our own family members before we take it elsewhere. The second aspect, very briefly, with regard to financial disputes. There is a statement, some have said it's a hadith. Many of them say it's not a hadith, it's a very famous Arabic saying. تعاملوا كالأجانب وتعاملوا كالأقارب. And what is that? That is, deal with people who are even strangers as if they are your family socially. Socially, people who are strangers, deal with them and make them feel at home like your own family members. And your own family members, as far as financial matters are concerned, deal with every family member as if they are strangers. Now, we don't do that. We don't, dot the I's and cross the T's with regard to our financial matters between our family members, brothers, sisters. I'll give you an example of Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Ali. Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Ali had a big room, where it was his library, and he used to rest and he used to entertain guests. There was a big room of his. If anyone brought something from the kitchen and left it in this room, he used to get angry with his children. Take it back to the kitchen. And he used to say, the children used to say, but why are you getting angry? It's one house. So he used to say, me and your mother, we have reached an agreement. Whatever is in this room is mine. Whatever is in the other rooms is hers. Don't mix up matters. We might look at it as completely, almost minor, insignificant. But it's when we don't clarify things in family matters, who belongs to what belongs to whom. And we find, for example, people are in a business for so long, no one clarifies whether they are partners or whether as family members they will get added benefits. No one clarifies anything. And when you don't clarify anything, when something happens, someone passes away, it leads to disputes and arguments. So just keep this in mind, what I have said. If ever, in terms of dealing with strangers, deal with them socially as if they are your family members. Financially, deal even with your family members as if they are strangers.
Yeah. Anyway, Maulana, we'll leave it as that. I want to say to you, Maulana, Jazakumullah, it's always a joy to interact with you. And I know your preparation, you are very, very thorough in it. Inshallah, may Allah give you a long life, inshallah. May you, inshallah, help the Ummah, really, in this country and the world over in taking its rightful place. And to all of you who participated, if you want copies of the program, you can go to my YouTube channel. It'll be there in another 48 hours. And you take care. And to Zunaid and Mizan in the background doing all that work. We will keep you informed about future programs. You already did about, 10, 12 programs already. So September is a bit of respite. We might have one program there, inshallah, if Allah gives us the strength and the capacity to do that. So, Maulana, once again, Jazakumullah. And
Jazakallah. And inshallah, I will also try and put it on my YouTube channel. But I just maybe add one hadith I would like to add. When
no
we
problem.
do see a dispute, an argument, and you can play a role, try and play a role. So Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was one day told the Sahaba, should I not tell you something that is even greater in reward than performing salat and keeping fast and giving charity? And they said, yes, Allah ya Rasulullah, tell us. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, al-islahu dhat al-bayyin, reconcile people, bring people together. It is even more rewarding than even salat, zakat, and so on. May Allah Ta'ala make us the means of staying away from arguments and disputes and resolving people's arguments and disputes because of the great reward with regard to that. Jazakumullah.
Maulana, I just said you can correct me if I'm wrong after the program. Or just share something that I heard one day, and this has really moved me to tears also. One day, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to Bibi Aisha, you ask me any question from your heart's delight, you can ask me. So she realized, that she wanted to miss this opportunity, and she wanted to ask him a good question. So she went to her beloved father, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, and she asked him, this is what I've been asked, what should I ask him? However, Abu Bakr Siddiq was a man of tremendous wisdom, and he said to him, you ask Prophet of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of all the things that are pleasing to Allah, which act is most pleasing? Which act is most pleasing? So she went to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he said to her, and I think he gestured, he said to her, when the two people are like this, you bring them together, Allah is so pleased. And so with that information, in excitement, she shared that with Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq. But Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq did not smile, he cried. He said, why are you crying? He says, well, if this act is so pleasing to Allah, I'm concerned about the opposite when you separate people, when you create that fitna. So I think the whole idea about reconciling, bringing the hearts together is so critical. It's part of our humanity. Our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a mercy unto all mankind. So again, to all of you, may Allah bless you, love you, and Maulana, inshallah, we would connect as we always do. And inshallah, we hope we are able to fly again. You take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.